Good morning and welcome everybody. It's now 10 a.m. in UAE. I think some of you have other time zones. Welcome and thank you very much for coming. We have a very great selection of people from around the world. I can see Per, he's one of my good partners from Denmark. There's Rebecca here from the UAE. There's people from, I believe, Asia, different places. We have one from the UK. And there's people from Switzerland, US, Canada, many different countries who've signed up because this topic is just something that interests people around the world. And innovation has always been something that we seek both in the UAE and many places. But sustainability and innovation is kind of like a cross field that's becoming more and more interesting. Yeah, so Maria and I are really happy to see you here. So for today, what the program is, it's a little bit about Maria and I and the topic itself. And then I will take over and talk very much about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, bring a few cases in here from the UAE. And Maria will talk a lot more about innovation and how you make that a business acceleration and boost your capabilities and your team. And then in the end, we'll have a little bit of time for a Q&A session. But right now, we would like to say welcome again. And today, this session is about the axis between innovation and sustainability. And it might sound like you choose one or the other, but actually, we will share with you that it innovates, it helps each other, and it really brings out the best of both worlds. So that's what, yeah, sorry, I'm just taking off this, yes. So that's what the topic is today. And I come from a company here in the UAE called the Umbrella Institute, which is a sustainability and CSR advisory. We help companies with this SDGs, but also with a lot of other things, how they save energy, how they save water, how they communicate what it is they're doing, and how they engage their community. So that's really what we do. And Maria, I would love her to tell on her own.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Maria. I'm an innovation consultant and design sprint master, and I work in Dubai and Europe. So I support organizations and teams reach their purposeful goals faster through innovation workshops, design sprints, and coaching. My background in marketing has really helped me understand user needs in many different industries. And then working with the global hackathon leaders and independently, I've got a glimpse into top tier corporate innovation teams, like working with Sanofi, AXA, WorldPay, Rolls-Royce, Louis Vuitton. And so I've learned so much about those innovation teams and their wins and learnings as well. So I'm now focusing on innovation workshops, solo, but also via agencies with bigger teams. And today I will be showing you how the SDGs can help with product innovation and increase team performance and engagement.
Well, I think like the topic we're talking about today, innovation has been a word that we've used for decades, right? But sustainability is becoming more and more the norm. But what we can also see is that innovation and sustainability is really interconnected. What we also do see in some of the big companies is that innovation is one team and it sits in one corner, and sustainability is another team and it sits in another corner. And maybe it's not even integrated across the level of the company. And that's another discussion we can have later, because both things are really something that connects with all the different departments in the different companies. Today, we will be talking about the SDGs as a strategic tool. And that means that it's about creating real change on a, what have I put, on instead of treating the symptom, like many of us do, both in our private lives and in our corporate lives, we have to treat where it comes from, the root of the issue. So for instance, if we take something like a beach cleanup, that is really great to do and it's a really good team engagement. But if you, with your company, can treat the root cause of that pollution in that beach, that's the strategic way of doing it, right? So if you can put up trash bins or educate the people about not throwing cigarette butts or plastic, then that's the strategic way of doing it. And that's really the beginning of this. Otherwise, the SDGs are 17 goals that are highly interconnected. So very often companies start with 1 or 2 or 3 SDGs, and that's really great because that's the ones that fit their company and what they're doing as a core part of their business. It might be production, or it might be that they're very good at something with water or electricity. So that's really great, but many of them connect with the other SDGs. So that's also another part of this, that it is really a truly interconnected thing. What the SDGs does better than many other tools I've seen is it bursts the bubble you're in your company. And we sit and we do our daily work and we're good at it and it's all good. It could go better in our company, but we continue and we just work a little bit harder on what we've always done. But the SDGs are an amazing tool for just pulling the rug and saying, I didn't ever think about education being a part of my company, but actually we are doing it somewhere. We never communicated it to each other, or we didn't place it on our website. We didn't even communicate it properly to our customers. So for many reasons, the SDGs represent a set of twists or loops for your company to really start looking at. Because as soon as you do this, you will be better both at what you're doing, but also at something else that might be a big opportunity that you haven't looked at. So that's the way we see it. And I will give you a few examples. Here in the UAE, we have, there's different issues around the world, right? Some places it's pollution, some places it's economy. Here we have a lot of interconnectedness actually, and a lot of gaps also missing because it's a relatively new country. So many companies have actually been thinking like social entrepreneurs, which means that they are looking at an issue before they've started a company. It can be one of these that I will tell you about now. Here in the UAE, we have 40 million palm trees. And each of these palm trees, they shed around 10 kilos of leaves every year. And you have to cut them off because otherwise the palm tree actually dies. So 10 kilos times 40 million, that's quite a lot of million kilos. And before, just maybe 8-10 years ago, it used to be something that you threw on the side of the road, or you of course put it into the waste management system and it ended in a landfill. Now there's a company that realized that this is a huge opportunity, both to make money and to create jobs, and also to take a waste issue out of sight. And additionally, here in the UAE, we don't have big forests, right? So we're importing all the wood for construction and building materials and everything we do. We're importing that from abroad. But this company has taken these palm trees, figured out a way to make them into a board, and the board can be reused infinitely. And it means that they have, over the past year, captured more than 1 million metric tons of carbon and really diverted 400 million tons of waste away from the landfills. And that's quite an accomplishment, right? While building jobs and creating a whole new field that wasn't there before. And we see other ones. They work, the ones I just explained about for the palm trees, I don't think they set out to say we work with these specific SDGs, but it came back to that they really target SDG 12, which is about production and consumption ways. And they target SDG 11, which is about communities and cities becoming a little bit more sustainable. They also target climate action. I think that's the core one that they're looking at. They really wanted to do something for the climate that also made a change in the local environment. And then, of course, you create jobs almost out of nothing. So you work with SDG 8, which is decent work and economic development. And as soon as you start to communicate these SDGs, then you communicate on a higher level with other companies as well. You make connections that were hard to say before, because you stop being competitors and start being teammates in a race, for instance, for climate change or for decent work and economic growth. And that really means that companies that before were competing can now set out and say, we have an initiative where we can put more into the pie and together take more out if we do this together. And that's very interesting. That is highly interesting. And then the next case I will tell you about is just that, because it's a very similar case also here from the UAE, where we also have a lot of waste oil from food production. We have a lot of fast food restaurants and chains here. We all eat a lot of French fries. I do too. And the CEO from this company, he actually says, please, eat more fries, because we need you to use more oil so we can make biofuel. And that company takes biofuel from a lot of these big chains, refines it in the bio refinery, and puts it back into the big trucks and cars that drive around the food and really make the infrastructure of the companies. And I know that they're also looking at some of the bigger industries for making oil, but that's why they say we have to eat more fries, because there's not enough food oil being produced, so we can really power something like airports and big shipping industries. So I can see, some info and links. I can see that I will definitely send you some links. The interesting part about the palm tree one actually is that they are now one of the first, not just net neutral, but carbon positive companies in the world, because they're actually on United Nations carbon capturing program. And it means that for every palm tree leaf they make into a board and sell it, they can sell carbon along with it. So you get credit and points for that. So I will definitely share it, because it's scalable to everywhere in the world. And scalability, of course, is one of the really core words of sustainability. So I don't know if you can see already some kind of like red line down this, but that the SDGs are a way to start thinking out of a box. We used to have a planet that just we took and made from, but now we have a planet that we have to rethink, and it actually creates, like, for many of us who want to be innovators or who want to think differently, then this is really, it's like a game, right? We're gamifying business these days with the SDGs. And I also have the trusty boxes here, as you see. they are easy to work with, but it really depends on who you are, which ones fit your company. So something like this is the SDGs were made for not for companies, but for countries in the beginning, right? We have 193 or now 96 countries who signed up in the beginning. And for them, it was sustainable development between countries and between regions. But it turned out that the SDGs were excellent business communication tools and business accelerators. So not all of them are very relevant to companies. And you will also see that something like SDG 10 that I didn't bring here, which is equality between countries, that one's very hard to tackle as a company, unless you are really a multinational company with a lot of government interaction. Are there any questions so far? Otherwise, I'll continue. Maria, you have any questions?
Do you want to just remind people what an SDG is?
Yeah, for sure. That's a very good idea. So the SDGs are 17 goals set forth by the United Nations in 2015. They actually came after something called the Millennial Goals, which not a lot of people have heard about, because they were 8 goals specifically made for creating social and environmental change and sustainable development in the developing countries. So they were more targeted on developing countries and very much intergovernmental sort of goals. But the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, or Global Goals, or I think they have a lot of different names, they are 17 goals with 169 targets underneath them, so some of them fit the different goals. And there's also 232 indicators, which also fit beneath. And as soon as you, like the 17 goals themselves, you can actually read them on boxes or on etiquettes and labels, different places. But you will be surprised if you haven't read the indicators and the targets, that they are different than you think. So I can see, for instance, the SDG number 10 that I talked about before, equality, and that one is used very often completely different than it was thought out. But that's because no one really reads below the surface. But if you do, if you take and you print out an A4 page with the targets from the different goals, then there's something for your company to work with. And it will actually give you challenges to solve. And that Maria will come back to in a moment, because that's really the core of innovation, isn't it? Having a challenge that you need to solve. But what we need to make sure is that it's also this strategic level that I talked about before. And we need to, when we talk sustainability, understand that people and companies and countries are not on the same level. So we cannot compare apples and oranges, like many are doing, and that's where greenwashing comes in. Or, but companies nowadays can do something. But if they start to compare themselves to someone else who's been working on sustainable development for 5 years or maybe decades, then it's a very hard comparison, isn't it? It really takes time, and it takes realization along the way. And there's nothing wrong with starting somewhere. So that's the whole thing, that very often the companies I talk to, they are sad or ashamed or afraid that they don't start high up enough on their own aspirations if they want to become a leader in sustainability, because they've seen other competitors do the same. They're a little bit sad that they don't have more initiatives or higher level partnerships, but you have to start somewhere, right? And the start is really what both Maria and I can help with in many ways, because that one is hard. It can be hard if you don't have a team that's set up for it, and if you don't have the right competencies. So the last thing I will be telling you about is the Umbrella Institute. We've built an Sdg Sprint, which is an online sprint for companies, where you put together a team from different parts of your organization, so from different departments. They can have different seniority levels, so they can be everything from the CEO to the newest intern. And in that sprint, they will really work together on what the opportunities are for your company regarding sustainable development and sustainability overall, and the Sustainable Development Goals. And we see some very interesting answers and some very interesting interaction once people start to do this, because actually, it's, I think Maria might say something like that, but we talk about innovation, right? But many companies that I go to, they don't even have a box where an employee out of 5,000 people or maybe 400 people can go with a suggestion. So it means that even if there's a person sitting at a production line who knows how to save water or make the process more efficient, he has nowhere to put it. There's no email or SharePoint place or even a comment box where he can say, I have an idea, right? And I think that's also the core of the work, that the sustainability and innovation is really about opening up for a challenge. Yeah, so I will hand over the word to you, Maria, and and thank you.
I just want you to comment on the poll results.
Yes, definitely. So Maria asked if the companies who are attending here today, if they've narrowed down the organization or the SDGs that they're working with in the organization. 50% are working on the Sustainable Development Goals, which is excellent. And 13% say they are not yet working, and 38% say 38% say yes. So it means that 88% are actually working with the Sustainable Development Goals already, probably on on different levels, right? But that's really the core of it. Once you've started, then you also get a hunger for learning more and seeing more, and what do other companies do? How can we get inspiration from competitors or from people in a completely different sector? So thank you for answering that, Paul, and for making. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, it's a lot of words. So you just asked if there's anything. It was great that you asked about the SDGs, because I take it for granted, that I talk about every day.
Yeah, and often I think it might be terminology that's on corporate level, it's quite well known, and you have maybe a CSR manager who is pressuring everyone. We need to define our SDG goals that we're targeting. We need to scope out our carbon emissions, and these goals can really help you. But once you've defined the SDG goals, you will have a better idea of challenges that your company is facing, and that you as a team and your employees can actually answer. So once you have a bit of a defined challenge, which Anne-Marie will also tell you how to define it later on, it's crucial, because in my experience with hackathons and design sprints, which are basically innovation challenges or a process, one of the most difficult parts of this is actually defining the challenge. When I was running hackathons for huge corporations, we would be also recruiting the developers or the tech talent to join them. And the project manager would often ask us, oh, just start recruiting already. But the challenge hadn't been defined, and we would refuse, because no one would like to just walk in the dark without knowing what goal to achieve. So defining the challenge is the #1 most important thing. Of course, there's going to be a variety of challenges. You might be focusing on water preservation challenge, but then there might be some quick wins, some huge projects, some H1, H2, H3 innovation goals projects there. So you have to prioritize them in terms of impact and effort, and then try and understand what options you have to answer these challenges. So you may have very technical projects that you might prefer to dedicate to your R&D team or outsource to some specialists. You may also have some more consumer-driven challenges that you would like to experiment with an external hackathon and bring in many different ideas from students or developer teams, or work with startups to give you inspiration or already made technical solutions to these challenges. However, it's very cool to actually look within your organization to answer these challenges and mine from the different departments all the ideas and solutions through the different departments to do this. And one of the best types of challenges that works for this is that if you have a challenge where it will be valuable to bring across this different expertise, and it's not always the case. So if you have a challenge that is actually quite consumer focused, where it would be valuable to bring in customer service personnel, marketing people, product people, and some tech expertise, it's a really nice recipe to actually create a very concrete solution from this. And in terms of challenge definition, an example might be, how might we monetize our byproducts from steel production? And then you might get inspiration from other industries doing something similar, how to extract the gas from the furnaces. And it might be very technical, but then who would be your final consumer? Can we look through our existing suppliers and consumer network and find customers who would actually purchase this? So there are many opportunities. It's just about phrasing the challenge. Once you do have your challenge and you've decided what kind of options you want to go for, you could also outsource it to a very experienced consultancy that are very experienced, have many people, have a large network, but can also be very costly and often take about 6 to 12 months, if we're lucky, to actually bring about a solution. And often there is a bit of resistance to change from employees when they receive direction from an external consultant who tells them, all right, now you should do this, 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 and this. And they're like, okay, fine. But if it comes from within, the change will be more gradual and there'll be more of a commitment to this change. So before I explain more about the brainstorming and experimenting with your ideas, I would like to just step back a bit and explain a bit more about innovation, because I haven't really defined that for you properly, and I talk about it all the time. So just to back up a bit, innovation is usually defined as the implementation of a new process, product, or service that actually adds value to a market, okay? So thinking of this, innovation adds value to a market, but looking at sustainable innovation, you're adding value to a market, but you're also making a positive impact to the market or externally. And it can be an incremental change, or it can be a huge transformation. So innovation doesn't always have to be the huge transformation. It can also be the incremental changes here. And I'm not sure if you are familiar with Dublin's 10 types of innovation. Dublin's 10 types of innovation shows that you have not just product, the offering innovation, but you can also innovate through the configuration, so the processes or the structure or the network. And you can also innovate through the experience. So this is more like the branding, the customer side. So there are many opportunities for innovation here. For example, the ideal way would be to actually pair two of these up. So for example, you might choose to innovate with network and product systems. For example, Diageo took their byproduct from their production of beer or whiskey, and they actually used it to generate power in their factories, reducing carbon emissions by 50% in that factory alone. So using their network and expertise and their own production process, they managed to create these new innovations. So it is a very powerful tool, and it opens up many ideation opportunities. And so this is exactly what the SDG goals allows you to do as well. It basically opens up opportunities to innovate. But again, if we look at innovation, it's not just, okay, we're making something new. It's a very, very careful art in a way. It needs to be a good mixture. So you need to have viability. Yes, it needs to make money for your business. It should be feasible. So it needs feasibility. It should be possible to create with the technology you have or expertise, or if you acquire a startup, or you might outsource some technical tasks. Desirability means that people will actually want to use it, so you will have customers for this, and it should have integrity, so there should be an impact to make it a proper impact innovation. So usually the innovation sweet spot is DVF, which is desirability, viability, and feasibility. But with the Board of Innovation, they added integrity, which makes sense. And that's more the impact, and that's the sweet spot in the middle. Okay, so if going back to what we said, that innovation is adding value to a market, it's very important to get your market involved in your innovation, which means you really need to understand your customer. And this often doesn't happen in innovation projects. It's often sent to perhaps a center of excellence that is completely in silos. It's separate from the marketing department. Eventually, they may pitch them an idea, but if they had involved that department from the beginning, the difference would be immense. So that's why I wanted to explain why design sprints are an amazing example of bringing this knowledge together. For those who might not have heard of a design sprint, it's basically an innovation process. It's a Google venture design process that has been modified over the years. Typically, it can be a 4 or 5 day process where you bring together crucial people who are decision makers. You might bring C-level people, you would bring the customer support, production, whoever is needed. And in some cases, you can also bring in partners. And this is what an energy company in Paris did, a very big energy company in Paris. They actually did it in 2 days. It was an internal hackathon. They had asked their employees for solutions to some 2 or 3 specific problems. And I think they received 80 or 90 well-planned out ideas. They selected the top 20 and then they brought them together to an internal hackathon, which is basically in the form of a design sprint. And they also invited their clients to get involved from the beginning. So they took the client expertise and needs right from the beginning. So this is crucial. Just to give you a quick overview in the design sprint, on the first day, it's all about understanding the end user. You would do interviews with your customer service team. If you have clients who might want to come in, you can interview them. You might get some new research on that industry if it's a new industry that a new market you haven't worked in before. And then you would really get stuck in, get inspired from other case studies, other examples, and then ideate. You would brainstorm with your team and you would sketch out ideas for a solution. And the solution, it can be many things. It could be a digital solution. It could be a physical solution. It could be a physical design, or it could be a process, or it could even be a change in the organizational flow. This is becoming quite common now with the circular economy, because the circular economy involves many different actors. And so you would need to often map out how your supplier network will engage with your new process. So the first day, you're understanding, getting inspired and ideating. The second day, you are all deciding in terms of voting what is the best solution. There are many rounds of this. You would plan the prototype. So with a storyboard, it could be, okay, we take the byproduct, it gets delivered to the supplier. The supplier will clean it and modify it, and then it will be branded X product, and it will be remanufactured and sent to this market and blah, blah, blah. Or it could just be a digital app that is actually allowing people to buy, I don't know, to buy their palm tree wood. Anyway, you would plan your storyboard and then you would either send it to a design team to prototype this, or you could actually do this internally. The idea is that you create a very basic prototype, which is not a final product, but it could be a final product that you would be testing on an end user. And it's just something that is good enough that delivers the idea of what you want to be testing. So let's see, I'll give you a proper example. This would be like a circular economy sprint format. First of all, you would analyze, it doesn't have to be circular economy. So you could analyze your material flow, the product life cycle, and understand where the problems are, or it could just be, we want to focus on reducing water. So you would take your challenge and then you would really define this properly so you can prepare your sprint. Preparing means inviting the right people into the room, getting your partners involved, maybe selecting which suppliers or partners would be involved, or clients. And it should be maximum 10 people really. But there are many different formats. You would do your sprint over a few days and test ideas on only 5 people, because this will allow you to get all the results you need. Then you would use that feedback, iterate on the product, and then you will be able to launch the MVP, which is the minimal viable product. You can launch it on a small section of the market to make sure it really works and start earning money. So, for example, if you wanted to roll out a huge water saving system in Dubai, that is expensive at scale, but if you were to incrementally roll it out, it would only cost maybe 10,000 dirham, which is about $2,000. Then you could roll it out on one building at a time rather than committing to the whole thing. Once you've done your one building, you would demonstrate the energy, the water savings, the cost savings, and there will also be some extra bonuses, which is employee satisfaction, and there's some other warm fuzzies that come out from that. And then you'll be able to roll it out quicker because you have already validated the solution. And what a design sprint can do is really shrink your product development time and budgets by about 75%. So it's really important. And if you have any more questions about a design sprint specifically, you can let me know. But there are many other formats, by the way. It's not just design sprint. You can do many different workshops. It might just be understanding your customers better through customer journey mapping workshops that I love doing. It might be lightning decision jams where it's really effective brainstorming, or it could be like a one-day ideation session, which is like the first day of the design sprint. So all of these processes really can improve your innovation culture within the company. Because when you use these tried and tested methods, you're really focusing on the final user. So the customer-centric thinking is really important, and it will show you success or failure very early on, rather than spending thousands of dollars on a project and then testing it at the end when you've developed it, only for it to fail. If you test early, you'll learn early, and then you'll be able to iterate and really launch a better product or service. By bringing people together from different departments, it really teaches collaboration. The different departments can really learn together. They understand each other's strengths really on. They also understand how those departments worked, and most often they haven't really worked together before. So by engaging them together, they have a better understanding of the whole process in their company. So that's a really noticeable impact. It teaches your employees who get involved in these workshops or sprints the importance of an aligned vision. So usually it's a top-down effort to make it success. So if it comes from the CEO or other C-level people of the team, then there will be increased buy-in. And by having an aligned vision, your employees will also be more motivated to carry on with these projects. And one thing I haven't mentioned is that in the past, some social entrepreneurship projects were seen as external to the main work. However, I'm saying they shouldn't be an extra fun project. They should be key to your actual current developments. So to make it work properly, they shouldn't be external. They should be internal to the team. If it's impossible, then they should have a dedicated time set aside to work on this. So yeah, so focusing on the final user, it helps market success, it accelerates time to market, it increases cross-departmental collaboration, it teaches many entrepreneur themes like prioritization and delegation, and it really breaks old habits. So instead of just having pointless meetings and presentations and doing the long process to get project funding, you can actually say to the CEO, we've tested this idea on 5 of our key users. They have all said that they would get involved and purchase 10 water-saving machines over the next 6 months. Can we create this project? And then they can't say no. It's a really strong argument. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you. There's many ways to create this innovation culture within your company. It's one thing to organize a design sprint or an internal hackathon, but there are many simple ways to do this too. As Anne-Marie was saying, just having a suggestion box in every part of your company is a really good idea. A lot of the corporates that we worked with in the past did a more digital version. Some of them even had innovation platforms where every employee has access to this platform and can actually respond to a challenge or give their own ideas separate to this. But the idea is that it breaks down the barriers, that it means you don't have to be in the innovation center of excellence to give an idea. You don't have to be in the teams with the C-level management at the right time to propose your idea. By breaking down barriers and offering opportunities, it could be forms, it could be challenges, any opportunities your employees can have, it's very important. And it's not just once a year. If you can do these workshops or brainstorming sessions every 3 months, it's ideal. And I'm about to ask you all a question. Firstly, have you ever run internal sprints or internal hackathons? And how often do you run company brainstorms with more than 5 people? And the important part actually of like running internal hackathons or sprints, which I really suggest you do, is that one of the key complaints that employees have is, it was an amazing event and I loved working with my colleagues and I was so motivated to hear from the CEO. I can't wait to get it out there, and we've proved it works, and then boom, nothing happens. So there needs to be a really well processed roadmap of what's going to come next, and this is crucial to ensure your employees are still motivated to carry on with these events and to carry on with working in general.
One of the interesting things is often with innovation, right, that employees need to be given the right to continue. Like sometimes they think that it's a closed event and that, okay, then I've done my part. But if you tell them that you can continue, then they will continue on their own and bring more ideas, right?
It's so true. Yeah. That's why like having dedicated time or like the permission, because often in the internal hackathons and sprints we've run, it's only the winning 1 to 3 teams who are allowed to continue their project. And the others are so disappointed, but they understand. And there's a funding issue as well. Who can actually, can the company afford these to give these 4 hours a week or however long you want? But that's why I recommend also giving opportunities to interns as well to help shape these projects as a full-time role and bringing them all together. And it's a very good onboarding mechanism for new hires as well. I just want to share the results from the poll. So actually most of you have run an internal sprint or hackathon before. 67%, awesome. The rest of you, I would highly recommend it and I would be happy to help you. How often do you run company brainstorms? Monthly, quarterly, every 6 months, yearly? One has said never, but okay, that's very encouraging. I think it's really become part of our company processes now, and even if it's yearly, I think that's still very positive. Even if it doesn't involve your whole company, if people start having it as part of their process, it's incredibly powerful. It's just making sure you do the right process. It's not just, okay guys, what can we do to make more money? It's having a very well-defined challenge and ideally doing an ideation process, which gives several rounds, including inspiration, looking negative, positive, future foresight, for example, and testing ideas out. I think that's one of the most important things. So if all of that resonated with you, I would love to pass over to Anne-Marie to hear what the next step would be.
Yeah, thank you. I loved your, like I've written down these Thodsen's 10 ways and your DVIF. I love those because it really also ensures that you have that engagement from the end user or your partners, right? And I think that you had a lot of insights that resonate clearly with me, that many companies are actually not asking their community or their audience. They're just, there's an assumption that they know what the end user wants or needs. So they are investing a lot of money in products or services that never really fit 100% what is needed at the other end. And that's just a shame, isn't it? Because it's not because they can't build the project or make the service, it's just because they didn't ask the questions. Yeah, excellent. So I think if any of the things that you've heard today resonate with you and your company, then Maria and I, we have this SDG Sprint that we're running. And the SDG Sprint really takes a challenge, and the challenge is, yeah, if I can, takes the challenge. How do you incorporate sustainability into your organization, and why is it valuable to your organization? And then it lets your employees from different departments answer this question. So every time you make a design sprint or an SDG sprint, and you have your colleagues answer these questions, then they really take ownership afterwards. And that's what we're building, a community where they take ownership, and they will keep asking, and they will also have some kind of value in keeping the process going, right? Keeping the innovation and the development going throughout time. Yeah. So I can see that there's a few questions. Can we name the 17 SDGs? Is that the question? Sure, I can also send a link. I have a few of them here. I can't say them all. There's no poverty, there's zero hunger, there's a lot about education and healthcare, equality, decent work. There's a lot about energy in different versions of them, and something about smart cities and infrastructure. And that's because 70% of the world kind of lives in cities nowadays, almost, and that's where the energy is spent. So making good and sustainable infrastructure in cities is really valuable. And then there's a lot of high-level SDGs that are about collaborations and about building strong institutions, and overall seeing the world as our precious commodity to take care of. I don't know if that answered the goal, but I can also definitely share a link. Yes. Cool. And Sam asks if we can connect and collaborate, and we sure can, always. And I think for any of the companies who would be interested in, for instance, exploring the SDGs deeper, we have this sprint that is an online sprint, and it's really COVID valuable, because you can have your employees sit in different directions and different places and do it. And then we share a report in the end, so you can see what their ideas have been, which issues they might see are interesting to work with, and how they break down like the silos, how they really engage with each other and come up with ideas for their own department or for their colleagues to work on. Yeah.
Sounds really good. And
I have a question for you, Maria, because that's one of the things that I find is key. I think you talked about it a little bit, but this idea that we have to continue the development and continue the innovation process. Do you know if there's like small or big things that we can do in a company, so that if the project manager leaves or forgets about the project, if there's a way we can continue the work?
Yeah, I think visibility on projects is really important. That's why there's like all the tools like Slack, even Discord within companies, some centralized system, even basically just a newsletter is quite a basic old school mechanism, but anything that communicates internal projects that you wouldn't know about, I think is very important. Ideally, it would be regular updates, workshops that can actually include employees in the progress. But yeah, I think just communicating what is happening is very important. Otherwise it's, oh, the innovation team, oh, the sustainability team. But by continuous communication, you actually know who these people are, you can reach out to them as well. And I think that's very important.
And I think sometimes we have to respect each other's time a little bit less, and understand me, right? Because I can see that in some of the companies, the project manager or the sustainability manager is a little bit afraid to take 1 or 2 hours in a few weeks away from their colleagues, because she or he knows that the colleagues are so very busy with what they're doing. Yeah. But if you cannot take 1 or 2 hours away in a week, then there's a lot of other things that goes missing, right? So I think we have to ask more of each other, actually, and set, have goals for continued development together, and asking other people to attend brainstorming sessions, for instance. If you see that Maria would be really great to have in a session, and she doesn't know that it exists, then go and say, hey, Maria, you have 15 minutes or half an hour, we would love you to join, right? But very often it ends up in a lot of emails, and should we do this on a different day, or I can't do that. Okay, yeah, but then...
It's so true. I think also just showing people the way and showing what is possible. For example, making sure that every smaller team is able to run effective brainstorm sessions without just ending up with a pile of ideas, but actually ending up with a prioritized list and an action plan out of a brainstorming session is a very useful tool, because then they will also be able to implement this instead of running this meeting. Oh, it could have been an email. Oh, it could have been a very effective brainstorm session rather than a 6-month project.
Yeah. And even if you put less time on it, right? Say we only have 15 minutes now, let's go do it. I mean, there's efficiency in those meetings instead of saying, yeah, let's brainstorm for 3 hours. Yeah, okay, halfway.
Timers all the time. We are very, very insistent on having a timer. It's a very time boxed process. So I would be happy to help anyone who is interested in aligning their teams with goals through like a lightning decision jam, or doing a customer journey mapping to understand your users, but also circular design sprints, or just teaching you how to run an effective ideation session. You can book a 30-minute call with me, and the Calendly link is in the chat, and Anne-Marie's link is in the chat too.
Yeah,
we've got 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions, or shall I just share?
Yeah, you're welcome to turn on your microphone if you have anything, even also comments about if there's gaps that you need to have filled from our conversation today.
Yes, an example of Uae-based innovation process combined with the SDGs. You had that energy, that oil. I know you said that one.
Yeah, but like
energy one.
Yeah, but I think that there are quite a few. For instance, I didn't talk about this, but Maria and I will be joining hands and doing this for a very large company here in the UAE, where the SDGs are somehow part of their thinking, because they are listed companies and they have to make a sustainability report, and but that they right now know that they have 7,500 people sitting, some on site, but also many of them off site, right? And it means that their corporate culture is kind of, it's not dwindling, but they wanted to stay engaged and stay together. So we'll use the SDGs as a process to work on like culture innovation in that company. I don't know if that explained it, but SDGs...
We can't name the company, but it's in the retail sector.
Yeah.
Right. And the other companies were in the energy sector, was that right? And
energy, production. We work like the Umbrella Institute. We have quite a lot of production companies, because they see that there's a lot of value in saving money, saving energy, rethinking their processes, and just maybe like doing something like bursting the bubble. The everyday we do our work great, but we know it can be done better, right? Yeah.
Hope that's helped. I'm just putting up our details here. If you've got more questions, then you can always connect with us. We'd always be happy to speak with you separately. And there are UAE companies doing this. We can't name them now, but you know, if you speak with Anne-Marie, she can tell you exactly which ones they are, perhaps. There are some obstacles as well to companies here. They are doing it, but they might not recognize that it's innovation. They're just doing it because it's cost saving. But by changing the communication, you can actually accelerate and scale up the growth of these changes as well.
And I think that there's a lot of companies, like we do see the ones who are doing great in sustainability, or like showcasing their product innovations and that sort of thing. But there's also still so much to be done for the companies who still didn't start yet. You can still manage to be a first mover in your sector or your region. And there's really a lot of interesting things to have from developing with the SDGs, or with like overall thinking out of the box with your company?
So I would be happy to help anyone who is interested in aligning their teams with goals through like a lightning decision jam, or doing a customer journey mapping to understand your users, but also circular design sprints, or just teaching you how to run an effective ideation session. You can book a 30-minute call with me, and the Calendly link is in the chat, and Anne-Marie's link is in the chat too.
Yeah,
we've got 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, an example of UAE-based innovation process combined with the SDGs.
Quite a few. For instance, I didn't talk about this, but Maria and I will be joining hands and doing this for a very large company here in the UAE, where the SDGs are somehow part of their thinking, because they are listed companies and they have to make a sustainability report, and but that they right now know that they have 7,500 people sitting, some on site, but also many of them off site, right? And it means that their corporate culture is kind of, it's not dwindling, but they wanted to stay engaged and stay together. So we'll use the SDGs as a process to work on like culture innovation in that company. I don't know if that explained it, but SDGs,
we can't name the company, but it's in the retail sector.
Yeah.
Right. And the other companies were in the energy sector, was that right? And
energy, production. We work like the Umbrella Institute. We have quite a lot of production companies, because they see that there's a lot of value in saving money, saving energy, rethinking their processes, and just maybe like doing something like bursting the bubble. The everyday we do our work great, but we know it can be done better, right?
I'm just putting up our details here. If you've got more questions, then you can always connect with us. We'd always be happy to speak with you separately. And there are some obstacles as well to companies here. They are doing it, but they might not recognize that it's innovation. They're just doing it because it's cost saving. But by changing the communication, you can actually accelerate and scale up the growth of these changes as well.
And I think that there's a lot of companies, like we do see the ones who are doing great in sustainability, or in like showcasing their product innovations and that sort of thing. But there's also still so much to be done for the companies who still didn't start yet. You can still manage to be a first mover in your sector or your region. And there's really a lot of interesting things to have from developing with the SDGs, or with like overall thinking out of the box with your company.
I've seen some of your messages. Thank you, everyone. That's really nice to hear. Samula, we are a property developer working on 30% reduction in power and addressing sick building syndrome. Oh yeah, and Marie, you must know a lot about that one. And water saving. Well, there's a lot to be done. There are even some quick wins that get overlooked as well, that I think Anne-Marie can suggest to you. Thank you.
Like Maria said, you're most welcome to write or connect with us, or just book an appointment with us. We love to talk, you can hear. so we're most interested in hearing what your issues are, and if there's anything we can do for your team to like engage actively and change something in your company.
So with that, it's almost 11 in the UAE. So we really appreciate you all joining us this morning, and it's lovely to see your comments, and hopefully we will hear from you again. Thank you for answering the poll. That's been amazing insights for us as well, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are in the world.
Thank you for attending. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.